a couple days ago, I came in from the out and someone in my family was like, so you're an atheist, right? And I was like, yes. And then they were like, so where do you think we came from? Like, did we come from soup? I was so baffled by that question. And like, where do you possibly start? That I've been thinking about it for like 3 days. I was lying in bed tonight and I was like, you know what? I should make a video on that. One of the things I find so frustrating is that in the moment, my brain just like shuts down and it's like, I don't know, we have no information on this topic. And I'm like, no, yes, you do. This was a whole thing we studied. And my brain will be like, psh, I don't know. Sucks to be you, man. And I finally sort of put into words what it is about the question that I hate so much. And it's the entire premise. The entire premise I hate. So for context, I was raised Jehovah's Witness for a while. And that really severely affected my ability not to be critical of other religions, ironically. Jehovah's Witnesses, there's a very strong emphasis on nitpicking why they are different from all the other Christian denominations. Everything from like Jesus couldn't have died on a cross. He died on a stake because that's what they would have used at that time period. All Christian holidays are rooted in paganism because they're actually stolen from like the solstices and stuff that the other evil pagan religions were doing. So we shouldn't have anything to do with those religions because it's evil and bad and wrong. Like, they're very fundamentalist in a lot of really weird ways. And it really affects you, you know? Like, as a child, I had some really weird ideas about the world. Like, I was convinced God could see you all the time. And that made me, like, really scared to go to the bathroom and stuff. Because I was, like, really scared God would be watching me and he'd be, like, disappointed in me for having bodily functions. Yeah, I was convinced God was everywhere all the time. He was watching me. I was also convinced there were demons everywhere all the time trying to steal your soul and corrupt you. Like, to the point where, like, as a child, I would make up other stuff God might be mad about that wasn't even in the Bible. I was just convinced, like, based off the whole depiction of God, that he would hate literally everything and me and the world. And I had to do everything in my power to like, not be punished and thrown in a lake of fire. There's like a real fear for me on a daily basis, and it really inhibited my ability to live a normal childhood. Then when I got into foster care, I was bouncing around from different homes, and all of them were Christian in some way. There's a very weird hippie granola Christian family I lived with. There was a sort of, you know, those Catholics where, like, they are sort of Catholics, but they don't, like, go to church or anything. They're just sort of Catholic all the time, and they don't like it when you say Jesus, Mary, or Joseph, because those are swear words. But other than that, you know, it's just, like, a very vague thing. And as a child, a very literal child, I was deeply upset by all these horribly liberal things that these evil, like, I love these people. But as a child, I was like, these things are wrong and bad. And the Bible says that this is the wrong way to be a Christian. And I know because I've done all the reading. Keep in mind, I was like 10. But yeah, I had a hard time with that because I saw these people living perfectly normal, functional lives without the fear of God weighing down on them all the time. And I was like, that's crazy. Then by the time I hit, I think 15 or 16, I started really questioning my faith and whether I even believed in God at all, because I thought about all the times in my life where I thought I saw God or demons or whatever, and there were very normal, natural, psychological explanations for those things because I was going through a lot of shit as a kid, and it made sense that that would be an idea I would attach to. So yeah, I started questioning it and whether it was even real, and I also got tired because I would go to these church sermons and I would hear people like apologetics. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically like modern Christians. They've had to sort of adapt ideas from the Bible to be more friendly to the modern day. And that involves a lot of like, some of these things were real and definitely things God said, and some of these things are not real. And they're things that God didn't say, but people said that he said them. And that's why we believed it for so long. Me being a very literal person, I was like, well, that doesn't fucking make any sense. Either it's all real and we can't do any of the things God said, or it's not real and we shouldn't be listening to it. There's a lot of little stuff like that just sort of added up. And it got to a point where I went to my adopted parents and I was like, hey, I've been having some serious doubts about it. And their response was not to like sit down and have a conversation with me and maybe go over some things. Their response was, tell me to quit worship band because only people that are secure in their faith should be allowed to participate in such a thing. And that was honestly like my last connection to faith or the church community as a whole. After that, I was like, I don't know, I have nothing in this community. Then, okay, they would keep me up for hours, all right? I would come home and they would keep me up for like hours till like 2 or 3 in the morning, going on and on about how they both have 2 degrees between the two of them, and are you saying I'm dumb? And they would like pull out all kinds of crazy arguments, everything you've ever heard. And it was very demoralizing for me, a child who was a teenager. So, as always, I became very spiteful. I would spend hours, okay, researching All of these arguments, all of these topics, all of the talking points. Matt Dillahunty, love him. Richard Dawkins, mixed feelings about him as a dude. I like some of his thoughts. Douglas Adams sometimes has funny things to say. I think that's why I really like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Genetically Modified Skeptic, loved his stuff for like a really long time. Oh, TJ Kirk, Amazing Atheist, that was a moment. Jimmy Snow, I really liked his stuff on Mormonism. I like everything, okay? I absorbed all the things. I read Rob Bell's book on God and love and marriage. Not a great read, wouldn't recommend it, but like you could read it if you really want. I thought it was trash. Yeah, so I did all this crazy research, all this obsessive studying, and I'd go home. And at a certain point, I realized it doesn't actually matter because when you're talking to a religious person, fundamentally, there is something different about the concept of God than anything in the natural world. And like, they're not really related to each other. And that's, I think, why I had such a hard time putting my thoughts together with this question. And like the person who asked me, they meant well. But I've had people ask me in a disingenuous way whether I think we come from soup or not. This particular person, they meant well. But in general, when people ask this question, the assumption is either God created people or we came from soup. And I think that's wrong, right? I think even if tomorrow I got a time-lapse video of us coming out from, as people say, soup, not really how I think that works, but people coming out of soup, and I was like, here, this is a time-lapse video from us coming out of the soup to you currently in the present day. It has been verified and authenticated. It is proof in your hands. You can watch it as many times as you want. It's available everywhere. You could just say that's how God made people. That's just his process, okay? That's God's creative process, was starting from soup and slooping some stuff together, and then that stuff became other stuff, and then those guys became other guys. Like, I know vaguely some things about how the universe began and what we think about it currently. You know, we all have sort of a last common ancestor with chimpanzees. The idea that all species share a common ancestor, very interesting. Did you know 40% of your orthologs are the same as the orthologs in a banana plant? I thought that was cool. Okay, like 40% of the building blocks, every couple of DNA bases that make up you, the person, also make up a banana plant. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to deal with that information, but it's cool. It's a cool thing that we know now. And there's a lot of stuff like that. You know, like if you're really into bones, I really think bones and skeletons are cool. There's a lot of weird shit humans have for bones that other animals have. And it's like, interesting. That's cool. Maybe we were vaguely related to marsupials at some point. That's cool. Does it change whether God exists or not? No, it really doesn't. That's what bothers me, okay? There was a time before we could fly, before we could climb high mountains, that people were like, I don't know, God's in the mountains over there somewhere, or he's up in the sky, you know, in the clouds. That's why we don't see him. That's why he's not like walking around among us, hanging out, drinking beer. He's up there somewhere. And then some pilots went up into the sky one day and were like, holy shit, I don't see God anywhere. Do you think that means he's not real? And then people started saying, no. God's in outer space. He's actually like above the sky level. We just didn't know that before because we didn't know how it was made up. But he's definitely there. He's just in space. We're like, yeah, okay, cool. then we sent astronauts to the moon and we put satellites in space that go around and around and give us internet and cell phones and stuff you're currently using to watch this video. And people were like, well, okay, God's not like actually in space. He's sort of in like his own pocket outside of space and time. It's like its own thing. He's there. He's real. Okay, he's in all the things here, but it's different. It's just a different thing now. And that will keep going until the end of time. And that's perfectly all right. The thing that bothers me is I don't think I should have to prove how the universe began for people to be like, yeah, I get it. You're an atheist. You don't believe in God. How is that fair? How is that fair? Because with God, you could just be like, I don't know. God did that. And it's fine. You know, everyone just accepts that. They're like, yep, that's cool. But you, if you're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think God's real. And people are like, well, then how do you know not to murder people? There's a lot of reasons why we don't murder people. There's a lot of reasons why we've developed the social ability to recognize that we shouldn't cause conflict with the people that we are surviving with. There's a lot of benefit to being a social animal in this environment that we originally came from. That just makes sense. It's a logical thing. God didn't need to do any of it. And like, to be clear, if you are a religious person, I do not think you are dumb. I have kind of come around on that, you know? Like when I was in my young atheist phase, I was very angry. I was being attacked by my parents all the time. And I became very bitter and hateful towards the entire concept of religion. And I was just like, all of this is stupid. I don't get it. Now as an adult, a very tired adult, I see the appeal. You get a whole community of people that'll like come and bring you casseroles when people are sick or whatever. They'll pray for you. I'm not sure if it does anything, but it's very nice. that people are willing to do that for you. You know, like the intention of wanting to help people. It's a very nice thing. Having sort of like a regular place you go every week and people tell you stuff, that's cool. And, you know, like I see that. I see that there are like spiritual benefits that people get from believing in something that helps them with their day. You know, when I'm having a bad day, I'll be like, the omens are not in my favor. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. This is a sign from the universe that it's just not meant to be. It's just not meant to be today. That's fine, okay? Even if you're an atheist, you don't gotta be logical all the time. You can be superstitious about shit. You can be like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't step on this crack. Or maybe I'll step on it 5 times. Depends on your family situation. You gotta remember that 53% of Canadians are Christian. And that's not including all the other denominations that are in there, okay? The vast majority of people in Canada are religious. I think there's been more of a move towards secularism when it comes to, like, social stuff and legal stuff. But people act like atheists are becoming this like super powerful force in the universe and whatever, and poisoning the world and all the people in it. It's actually a very small group. You're more likely to run into people that are atheists online on like Reddit or the internet or YouTube than you are to run into an atheist in real life here. I've met very few people that are atheists. Almost all of them were very young people. So it gets a little tiring. It gets a little tiring to have to go over the same stuff over and over again. I don't want to be explaining forever why it's not sin in my heart that's preventing me from seeing God. It's that, I don't know, God made me this way. And God made me to eventually think that God isn't real. So until God himself finds a way to tell me, like, hey, I'm a real guy, because God will know how to do that, okay? If there's a God and he's omnipotent and he knows all the things, he will know exactly the thing to convince me. And he hasn't done that. He hasn't sent a guy. He hasn't sent any boats. I don't know. Maybe I'm not supposed to believe in God. Maybe I'm one of those guys. Maybe that's God's plan. At a certain point, you are an atheist in a religious community, or just an atheist in a family that's very religious. You just gotta hit that escape button and be like, I don't know. Maybe God's real. Maybe he's not real. Doesn't affect me. This is how I've chosen my life. These are the things in it. If God was real, not sure I would like him as a person. I'm not sure if that would even be proof for me that I would want to listen to him as a guy, because he was kind of a jerk in the Bible. Is that blasphemy? It's probably blasphemy. Yeah, I don't know. And it's like, it's not even that those things are important to me. It's like I've had to develop certain responses to questions because I'm just tired of talking about them. I'm tired of explaining, like, this is stuff that we know about the universe and the things in it, and having to pull out all this stuff. Like, it's cool when it's someone who's genuinely interested. There's this cosmologist, I can't remember who it is, and they were tweaking these different like computer simulations of universes to try to figure out like where that sweet spot where life can exist actually is in the universe. And it was really cool. It's a really cool idea. But you could look at that same information. There are people that have, and they'll go, well, this is evidence that God created the universe, because there's like a very fine point in time and space and stuff where life could have existed. So the only way for that to have happened is that someone did it on purpose. And then there are people who are like, well, that's really cool. This is just proof of how crazy and random the universe is, that this literally wouldn't work any other way. I think the only way I can think to like summarize my thoughts on the whole, like, did we come from soup or were we created, is I don't really know if we came from anywhere. I don't really know if we began. And that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to most people, because, you know, like, everyone's heard of the Big Bang and the soup and such. But for me, I'm not convinced that we really began. Like, I don't know if there was a starting point. There's this Douglas Adams talk that I really like. It's called the Allegory, the Puddle. And basically he's like, okay, so I want you to imagine that there's like a hole in a sidewalk, a crack, like a crater that has developed in a sidewalk. And it rains, and the sidewalk fills with a puddle, and the puddle becomes sentient. Don't ask any questions. It's just a sentient puddle. And the puddle is looking around, and it looks at the edges of the crater that it has formed in, and it goes, wow, you know, this crater fits me perfectly. Like, I fit in this crater so perfectly. That's incredible. Obviously, somebody must have made this crater and me just for this purpose. Like, obviously, this is where I'm meant to belong. And that's so cool. Obviously, I'm a very special puddle. Someone put me here for a very special reason, because I fit so perfectly into this crater. I think Douglas Adams was actually talking about climate change and stuff. But I think about that a lot, like, all the time. Because part of me is like, what if we didn't really begin somewhere? What if this is just like another cycle? You know, like water. Technically, we sort of have a vague idea of the cycle of water. It goes into the clouds, it becomes clouds, and the clouds rain, and then that rain goes into the earth, and then it does its thing, and then it evaporates and goes back up, it becomes clouds, and it does that again and again. But, like, over time, it changes a little bit, you know? If we take away a wetland, or we take away an oasis, or we build a parking lot somewhere that rain doesn't have somewhere to sit. So then it goes back up into those clouds, and then the wind pushes a little further, and then somewhere else becomes a place that has lots of water. So over time, that whole area that might have been a beautiful, lush rainforest of stuff is now a deserted wasteland. But the water didn't disappear. It's not like the water never existed or disappeared or died. It just went somewhere else. The water is still physically there in the world. It's just in a different place now. Yeah, I think about that a lot. Like, climate change deniers, I'm not on board with all that. That's a whole other thing. But there is something about the argument that, like, every couple hundred of years, we have all kinds of crazy changes in our environment. We had the Ice Age. There's that whole, like, Pangea thing. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. It's all there. All the things were there that were previously there, but in a different form. And maybe that's how people were. Maybe instead of us, like, only coming from the soup, maybe there was a point in time where there was even a completely different thing from the soup. And if you just went back and back and back, there would always be a different thing. You know, maybe there was a Big Bang, and then before the Big Bang, there was a whole different set of universe stuff happening and guys in that universe, and maybe a version of people that's completely different. Maybe there was a time where people were part dolphin or something. I don't know. I just don't feel like I have to know that to be able to explain why I'm an atheist, because I think they're separate things. There are people that will see God in everything. There are people that will see a rock and they'll be like, wow, God made that rock. There are people that will look at the sky and they'll be like, wow, those leaves, God made them. And that's really cool. It's cool that there are people in the world that they see everything as, like, very magical and incredible and stuff. I'm not one of those people, okay? I live in Alberta. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I'm like, I would never go outside. I would never choose to do that. I don't look at a mountain range and I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I'm like, oh, rocks, dirt, insects, trees. It's all gross to me. When people are like, oh, it's so sad that we don't live the way we used to and we camped outside in the tents with our community. And I'm like, no, okay? If I could have a completely barren room that's all concrete and white walls and nothing could ever live in there except the house plants I chose. Green walls, love those. Love garden plants and shit. But I don't want any insects. I'm that person, okay? I'm the person that, like, the modern world was made for. I would hate it. I would hate to live in the outside in a tent and have to, like, chop my own wood and shit. I'm not doing that. I like that I can choose to go do woodworking or whatever as I see fit. I'm not gonna choose that life all the time. Van life people, weird as fuck. I have a friend that really wants to travel the country in a van and just live out of his van. He thinks it's very cool and romantic. And I'm like, oh, no. I want to have a real bed with a real mattress that I can sleep in. That, for me, that's great. Like, to me, okay, my argument is, like, if God made me this way, where he was like, you're gonna hate the outside and dirt and insects, and you're gonna appreciate all of these things, that was on purpose, okay? If God was real, he made it so that I would like these modern comforts and whatever. And that's not because I'm filled with Satan. It's hard to explain, but, like, because I grew up so religious, I was convinced everything was the devil's work. Because the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have this thing, it's called being in the world, but not of the world. And I always thought this was a normal Christian concept. I thought all Christians grew up being taught this. Apparently, it's just Jehovah's Witnesses. They're just extra extreme. Because I think about it all the time. Because there's me in my home, in my own space. And then there's being in the world, which is all that the other people and the stuff you have to deal with. But, like, you don't really have to be in the world if you don't want to be in the world. It's, like, over there. And you have to, like, go out and participate in it for the essential thing. Like, I've dated Christian people where I'll be like, is this okay? Because the Bible says that, you know, you can't be unevenly yoked. And what that means in layperson terms is basically there's a chapter in there where they're talking about yoking oxes. And it's where you put the two oxes together and they walk along stuff. And the whole idea is that if one ox is moving faster than the other ox, they're unevenly yoked, and then the plow will not work the way it's supposed to or something. I'm not sure. I'm not a farmer. So I would be like, the Bible says it's wrong. The Bible says you're not allowed to date people that don't have the same values and religious ideas as you. And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, yeah, it's in the Bible. Haven't you read it? But yeah, I've read all the things. I've seen all the books, watched all the documentaries. And at a certain point, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I've never felt God anywhere. I used to think that maybe I did, but then I realized that's just because I was a very traumatized child. Every single thing that people were like, oh, God did it. There's no way to prove that. There's no way to be like, yeah, God definitely made the highways and the leaves. I don't know if he did. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe God is a lady and she made that. I'm not sure. I liked The Shack. The Shack is a good book. I think even if you weren't a terribly religious person, it's a good book. But yeah, I don't know. At a certain point, it just wasn't for me. I realized that it wasn't really relevant to my life or the decisions or how I make the decisions, and that's just how that be, and that's okay. I think if you are a religious person and you're like, God is definitely real, I talk to him all the time and he talks back to me. That's cool. I think if that is helpful to you and spiritually that like feeds something for you that you need, that's cool. I think it's neat. Witches, they got cool shit they're doing. That's basically therapy. All that like write all the shit you're angry about on a note and burn it. Therapy. Going to confession and telling the Father how you have sinned. Therapy. Those are all good things. Talk about your feelings. Write that shit down. Burn an effigy of somebody that was mean to you. Do what's the thing with this string? Like a string cutting ceremony. Do that. Put the two candles next to each other. Put string between them. Burn the string and be like, fuck you, Jeremy, we're not dating anymore. That could be for you. Those can all be your things, and that's cool. Okay, I like tarot cards. Sometimes I do that. I'm a little superstitious about it, and I can't explain it. I just think it's neat. There's logical explanations for why tarot cards work and what those things are. I've thought about those reasons, but I'm still a tiny bit superstitious. I am not immune. I'm not immune to spiritualism. Sometimes I'll see crazy people on the internet and they'll be talking about some weird pill and how it actually works scientifically because the byproduct of our focal hormones go into our gut and then our gut does a thing and then the gut health bleeds into your diaphragm and then that's how you get cancer. I'll see that and I'll be like, that could be real. It's not, but it could be. And it's okay. We're all superstitious. All the people. I don't think there's a single atheist person in the world who's never been superstitious about something. Okay, we're all superstitious. Sports fans, that's a whole thing all on its own. But yeah, please don't make me explain how the universe works. I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I'm not a cosmologist. I'm just a guy on the internet telling you stuff I think is cool. I don't know shit.